My name is Lauren Dole, and the title of my capstone project is Building Capacity for a Circular Economy, Overcoming Barriers to Engaging Businesses in Reuse Through Effective Communication. So to get started, I'm going to provide a little background to set the foundation for my research, and I'll start with the economy, which is currently based on a linear model. Take, make, waste. This model generates large amounts of waste that ultimately ends up in landfills, which is not sustainable long term. Sustainability service providers, or SSPs, are well positioned to support businesses in adopting circular economy practices, which is an alternative to the linear model in which they take what would be waste, transform it into usable materials that are then cycled back into the economy, completing the loop. Visually, you can see the difference between these two models in Figure 1 below there. But while SSPs are able to help in this transition, businesses often encounter various barriers to engagement. Therefore, this project aims to investigate which communication methods are most effective for overcoming those barriers, which leads me to my guiding research question, which is, how can sustainability service providers use effective communication to overcome businesses' barriers to implementing sustainable resource management practices? To answer that question, I conducted a mixed methods research approach, which I employed under Cami Bruner during my remote internship with Repair Reuse Washington. During my time, I investigated other commercial reusers domestically who provided insight into how SSPs provide support for circularity. With this in a literature review, I began an interview process of representatives from SSP, which aimed to learn more about their outreach processes and the most common hesitancies that they hear. I used this interview data to inform a short survey of SSPs to discover the best communication practices for engaging an audience. I compiled my findings in a research section that is shown here, which is split into two main focuses: the barriers to implementation for businesses and the best practices for communications by SSPs. I found three main barriers for businesses in adopting more sustainable practices: convenience, cost, confusion. Convenience of implementation was a concern for businesses who are worried that the time and effort required to transform their business practices towards those that favor circularity will be too much. Cost is also pretty self-explanatory, but this concern centers around the worry that implementation will cost significantly more than their current practices. And lastly, confusion or misunderstanding is a barrier that, from my research, actually can cause the first two. Many businesses don't fully understand the circular economy approach, including how to implement it and what it could cost. The bottom line is that it's important that SSPs find a solution to these barriers, which brings me to my next focus, which is the best practices for communication. The solution to surpass these barriers is communication, and based on survey and interview responses, I identified the best practices for communication based on three key parts of outreach: modes, approaches, and framing methods. Starting with modes, which focus on how we reach out to businesses, whether that be a phone call, a flyer, a social media post, a community board, anything like that. Direct modes of outreach are actually more effective because they can be tailored to the specific needs, or in this case, barriers that businesses may have. It's also helpful to have a kind of champion within the business that you're targeting because they act as an advocate on the inside and speak to your credibility as well as build trust before you even meet them. Moving on to approaches, unsurprisingly, the most effective one, according to survey results, is an incentivized approach. In Figure 2 here, you can see my bar graph of survey data that I collected, and of those that I researched, the one on the far right there is the incentivized approach, which has the strongest distribution of likely and very likely responses that indicate that this approach, where the audience is rewarded for engagement, is seen as very successful. The last part of outreach that I researched was the framing methods. The two most successful framing methods are economic framing and social framing. Economic is where a message is communicated in terms of like potential gains or losses financially, and a social framing is where messages could center around the existing participation of other entities in their community or in their industry. The reason these framing methods are so effective is that they evoke both positive and negative emotion, which can prompt action and actually help SSPs surpass barriers before they're brought up. For example, say a business is encountering a cost concern, a great response from an SSP would be using an economic framing to adjust for that. That brings me to my takeaways, or how these results can be applied. Utilizing the barriers that I identified in my last section can help inform suitable communication strategies to make SSPs more successful in engaging businesses in circularity overall. With the outlined results about best practices, SSPs can better understand the strategies to reach businesses by addressing common concerns and encouraging the introduction of circularity into their practices. And this concept isn't unfamiliar. It has been done before, like with this example in Figure 3, IKEA has what's called a circular shop, which is a program that allows customers to sell back their unwanted IKEA products for things like gift cards, so that they can be used for reuse. And this is a great example of usable materials being diverted from landfills and instead going back into our economy. These findings are significant because, on a more general level, improved communication makes a more informed, more sustainable economy of producers. And by starting at the top of the economic food chain, SSPs can make a larger overall impact on limiting resource waste by encouraging circularity. These findings and recommendations could be expanded on with further research to be applied to other sustainability goals and focuses outside of my scope of waste, like greenhouse gas emissions, for example. Overall, emphasizing connection, communication, and collaboration with various industries can help shift global priorities towards sustainability, working towards circularity in our economy, and ultimately making a broader, greener impact on our future. And just to end, I want to say thank you and acknowledge those that were very helpful in this process. Thank you to my site supervisor, Cami, my colleagues, my faculty advisor, Lauren. I'm incredibly grateful to my loved ones, friends, Olivia, Will, my family, anyone who supported me throughout this experience. I really couldn't have done it without y'all. Thank you.